So yeah, no, it is absolutely about power, but particularly about how power relates to truth and fact and audibility, about how some stories get suppressed, whether it's the story that this person assaulted me or the story of this is the science of how reproduction and abortion happen, or the reality of climate change, or what just happened. And reading it again on the train, getting ready for this conversation, I was really struck by how over and over it's about people who've become so powerful they can prevent certain things from being heard and force things that are not true to be propagated. And so it's very much about that kind of power and how destructive it is. And often that is the property of white men, not always. There are other people with vested interests in controlling women's bodies, controlling the news, protecting the guilty and assailing the innocent, and so forth.
It feels as though that there have been some successes in reversing that, and at the
Yes.
same time there are still a lot of sort of failures. It feels that the Me Too movement has been a huge sea change in how women have been able to talk about their experiences. The ongoing case of somebody like Harvey Weinstein is a really interesting lesson in seeing a hugely powerful man fall from grace, if not from power. That's still ongoing, obviously. But then at the same time, as you mentioned, we have a president in the United States who seems to be able to say whatever he wants, blatant lies at times, and for that not to be challenged.
I see Me Too as not a new movement, but a particular stage of feminism. Feminism from 2012 or 13 on had really reached a new phase, and people like Bill Cosby had been exposed before Me Too happened. What is shocking when you look at Bill Cosby, at Harvey Weinstein, at Jimmy Savile, at the BBC, at so many of these people, is that their predatory campaigns were able to go on uninterrupted for decades because they had so much power and their victims had so little power that they were able to prevent these people from speaking up. In Harvey Weinstein's case, with Mossad agents, threats, lawsuits, non-disclosure agreements, and huge payments from his company, which was complicit in all this, and you see this enormous armature, which is sometimes society itself, sometimes lawyers, and particular threats, and preventing people from being able to tell their story. And that has changed some. In feminism, I always say, we're trying to change something that is thousands of years old. The fact that we haven't completely fixed it in 50 years doesn't dismay me. If I look at the period I was born in and where we are now and how profoundly different that is, with women's ability to enter many kinds of roles and positions they didn't have access to, from airline pilots to presidents to, judges and etc., and a certain amount of equality in some places, I see, including equality within marriage and domestic life, and sometimes equality of audibility when we tell our stories about what happened. I see tremendous change. That does not mean that now we can all rest because everything's beautiful. It means that we're well on our way and we have a long way to go. And similar in the US, the Black Lives Matter and other anti-racist movements have really shifted things. And Black Lives Matter, for example, exposed how often the police kill people who are unarmed, are not posing a threat, did not deserve to die, and how often the police lie about that. And so part of what you see is the exposure of authorities as untrustworthy and unreliable, whether it's powerful men lying about their sexual crimes or police lying about the reasons why they did what they did. And so it's a kind of leveling of hierarchies, in some ways a dismantling of hierarchies that I think is quite revolutionary and happening in many ways.
In fact, you mentioned in the book a personal experience of working as a waitress and being touched by somebody.
Yeah, and the story is that I was a young bus, we call them bus boys, but sometimes they're girls. I was at a cafe when I was 18, and there's a bleary-eyed alcoholic old chef about 3 times my age who used to grab me from behind, and it was creepy and scary and loathsome and a violation of my dignity. And this was 10 years before Anita Hill. I didn't think anybody was going to give a damn about my right to bodily autonomy. And so I did something very underhanded, which is the next time he did it, after it had been going on for a while, I made sure I was holding a big tray of clean glasses, and I yelped and dropped them, and they all shattered. And breaking glass had a kind of voice that I didn't. The boss, who did not necessarily care about my bodily autonomy, did care about whole trays of glasses. And so, he told the cook to never do it again, probably for the sake of the glasses. And the cook knew that I had essentially tricked him and was clearly like resentful, but I had won. But I had to win by such a sneaky, underhanded means. And I realized when I was a little shocked to see a waitress turn around the minute she was grabbed like a martial artist and throw a customer to the ground on this YouTube video, I was a little shocked to see her do it, because I think even now I would have, did it really happen? What should I do? Possibly this was a waitress in a place where she wore a very skimpy outfit. She was used to it, and she resolved, as I did with the glasses, next time, And but the news story was that then her boss fully supported her. They called the police. He was charged. I can't imagine something like that having happened when I was young. Everybody would be like, oh, get over it. Nobody was hurt. You have no sense of humor. Suck it up, blah, blah, blah. And so those two incidents were really kind of a measure for me. Not that everything's great. Men still grab waitresses behinds, but just to see that different reaction and the support for her was really kind of exhilarating.
What can often happen in these situations is that men will then turn it around and make it about them.
Something I come across over and over again is we're told to think about how men feel, and it's a bit like the judges, and we have all these old male judges in the US who suggest rape victims are ruining some young man's bright future, rather than that he personally chose to commit a felony crime of his own volition and attempted to ruin her bright future by engaging in a horrendous act. And we get that a bit where it's like, oh, poor men, it's so uncomfortable for them not to be allowed absolute license to do anything they want. I think men who know how to respect other human beings aren't really altered in any way by this. You hear men saying, like, I'm afraid to talk to women, and it's like, if you can't tell the difference between talking to a woman and grabbing her ass, then you have a problem. And if you can tell the difference, you've probably been talking to women and it's been fine, and you can continue talking to women and it's fine. There's probably a rule of thumb, like if you wouldn't do it to a man, don't do it to a woman. So exactly, the title, Whose Story Is It, is in this case, whose comfort do we home in on? And being raped and sexually harassed and assaulted are really uncomfortable. And to shift to men being made uncomfortable by the reality of that being outed is kind of pathetic, kind of obscene, and kind of ridiculous all at once.